The military officers from Korea are celebrating their recent victory over Vietnam. Colonel Kim Jin-pyong, who successfully captured an island from the Vietnamese, is invited by his superior to have a drink in celebration. At first, Jin-pyong declines, saying he's quit drinking, but when the general teases him, he gives in and drinks anyway. A little later, while the celebration continues inside, Jin-pyong steps out and throws up. He lights a cigarette to calm himself, but then two officers come out of the building. Not wanting to chat, he hides nearby. As they talk, one officer complains about how the general keeps praising Jin-pyong just because he's his son-in-law. Before the gossip goes any further, someone calls them back inside. The next morning, Jin-pyong meets Captain Kyung Woo-jin, who has just been transferred to their base. While reviewing his files, Jin-pyong notices that Kyung also served in Vietnam. Then he spots a woman's name listed as Kyung's wife and asks about it. Kyung explains that his wife is Chinese, which somehow catches Jin-pyong's attention. That evening, Jin-pyong returns home. His wife is setting the table for dinner and reminds him that he needs to visit the hospital for a photo session with the nurses. As they eat, she mentions meeting Captain Kyung's wife and says she's glad the new couple also doesn't have children, just like them. Jin-pyong then notices several red circles marked on the calendar and asks about them. His wife explains those are her ovulation days. Since that day is one of those marked dates, the couple decides to try for a baby that night. Afterward, Jin-pyong goes out for a walk. He hears birds chirping nearby and follows the sound, finding several cages lined up with birds inside. He carelessly blows a bit of cigarette smoke toward one, but suddenly a woman appears behind him and tells him the birds don't like that. He turns and realizes she's Captain Kyung's wife. Quickly, he apologizes. She asks if he dislikes birds, and he tells her he doesn't. He never meant to bother them. The next day, Jin-pyong visits the military doctor. He explains that he's been seeing things and suffering from panic attacks ever since the war. The doctor tells him these are symptoms of PTSD and that he needs proper treatment. Before Jin-pyong leaves, the doctor gives him some medication and reminds him not to drink alcohol. Jin-pyong then asks if the doctor has told anyone about his condition, and the doctor assures him that he hasn't. Later, Jin-pyong goes to the hospital, where his wife is waiting for him. He takes photos with the nurses, including Captain Kyung's wife, Jang Gaeun. After the photo session, he joins the nurses as they care for injured officers. Meanwhile, his wife introduces herself to Gaeun and casually asks why she and her husband don't have children yet. Although clearly uneasy, Gaeun admits that she hasn't been able to conceive. Just then, an injured soldier calls out for Jin-pyong's wife to help him sit up. As she moves closer, Gaeun notices a blade in the soldier's hand. Before anyone can react, she pushes Jin-pyong's wife away and ends up being taken hostage by the unstable man. Seeing this, Jin-pyong rushes to help. He faces the soldier and calmly tells him to release her, but the man keeps yelling for them to send him back to Korea. Knowing he's suffering from PTSD, Jin-pyong gently tells him that he's already in Korea. Still, the man refuses to let go, so Jin-pyong draws his gun and points it at him. Frightened, Gaeun pleads with him to put the gun down. Jin-pyong lowers his weapon and tells the soldier he'll help him go back to Korea if he releases her. When the man finally loosens his grip, he suddenly lunges for the gun. In the struggle that follows, the gun goes off, and the bullet hits Gaeun in the shoulder. But instead of worrying about her wound, Gaeun starts asking for her missing earring. Later, at the military camp, Jin-pyong hears shouting from another room and goes to check. Inside, he finds Captain Kyung furiously beating the same unstable soldier. Jin-pyong steps in and stops him, explaining that the man was hallucinating and couldn't control his actions. Jin-pyong and Kyung step outside for a smoke. While talking, Jin-pyong asks if he can visit Kyung's wife to apologize for what happened. Kyung agrees. Jin-pyong then visits Gaeun's hospital room. He brings her flowers and asks how she's feeling. She tells him the flowers will wilt if they're left without water, so he goes to the hospital office to ask for a vase. He trims the flowers carefully, arranges them in the vase, and brings them back to her room. He also surprises her by returning her missing earring. When she tries to put it on but struggles because of her injured arm, she asks for his help. Jin-pyong gently helps her wear it, and as he does, she tells him she was deeply moved by his courage that day. Later that day, Jin-pyong returns to work. An officer informs him that the owner of a local music studio he often visits has been arrested by the military police. Since Jin-pyong knows the man personally, he joins the interrogation. He learns that the studio owner's crime was dancing with the officers' wives on Monday mornings, a rather unusual accusation. Jin Pyong assures the interrogator that his friend meant no harm and promises it won't happen again, persuading them to release him. Afterward, the two go out for a drink. Curious, Jin Pyong asks why he only dances with the wives on Mondays. The man laughs and says that lonely housewives usually choose Mondays as a fresh start for mischief. The next day, Jin Pyong and his wife join Captain Kyung and Gaeun for a picnic. At one point, when Jin Pyong and Gaeun are left alone, she quietly admits that she hasn't stopped thinking about him since his last visit. He confesses that she's been on his mind too. The moment grows tense, but Gaeun changes the subject by asking about the design engraved on his lighter. She says it looks beautiful, and Jin Pyong, without a word, slips it into her bag. Over the next few days, the two begin exchanging subtle, longing glances whenever they see each other. Then one evening, the military hosts a party for officers and their families. Gaeun arrives wearing a backless dress, immediately drawing the attention of a high-ranking officer. He asks her to dance, and though she's clearly uncomfortable, her husband encourages her to accept, eager to please his superior. As they dance, Jin Pyong notices the older man's hand brushing against her back. Unable to intervene, he quietly leaves and heads to the restroom. After Gaeun manages to break free from the officer, she goes looking for Jin Pyong. He apologizes for not stepping in to protect her, but she tells him she's thankful for him anyway. Overcome by emotion, Jin Pyong suddenly kisses her, and they share a passionate moment until someone knocks on the restroom door. Startled, Gaeun quickly leaves before they're discovered. The next day, the officers' wives gather for tea, except Gaeun. During their talk, they gossip about her past. They say that during the war, her family escaped to the mountains, but after her father died, her mother abandoned her. She was taken in by Captain Kyung's mother, who eventually arranged for her to marry her son. One evening, Captain Kyung and his wife have dinner with Jin Pyong and his wife. While the two spouses are busy chatting about coffee, Jin Pyong quietly writes a note for Gaeun, saying he wants to see her alone. He discreetly passes it to her. She writes back, telling him to meet her at the cathedral the next day at noon. The next afternoon, Jin Pyong meets Gaeun outside the cathedral, and he drives her deep into a forest, away from anyone's eyes. There, they give in to their desires and share an intimate moment. Afterward, Jin Pyong drops her off and drives away, but in the following days, he can't stop thinking about her. Obsessed and desperate to be with her again, he comes up with a plan to send both his wife and her husband away for a while. The next day, Captain Kyung tells his wife that he's been assigned to assist an English convoy as a translator and will be gone for a few days. As soon as Kyung leaves, Jin Pyong visits Gaeun late at night, but when he knocks on her door, she refuses to let him in, saying he shouldn't have interfered by sending her husband away. Rejected and frustrated, Jin Pyong heads to the music studio to drink with his friend. In his drunken state, he confesses that he's been having an affair with Captain Kyung's wife. His friend warns him to stop before things get worse, but Jin Pyong ignores his advice. Still unable to stay away, Jin Pyong visits Gaeun again, this time bringing her some soup. She finally opens the door, and they both admit that their relationship needs to end, but despite their words, they give in to temptation and spend the night together. Over the next few days, while their spouses are away, they continue to see each other in secret, living in fleeting happiness. Then one day, Jin Pyong receives a call from one of his men, informing him that Gaeun's mother has been in an accident and is in the hospital. Jin Pyong quickly drives Gaeun there, and when they arrive, they find her mother and mother-in-law in the same room. Her mother-in-law, sensing the truth just by looking at them, realizes that Gaeun has fallen for Jin Pyong. Instead of scolding her, she tells Gaeun to follow her heart, admitting she knew her son was never the right man for her. But when Gaeun goes to the truck where Jin Pyong is waiting, she tells him that what they're doing is wrong and that it has to end. Jin Pyong is devastated by her words and refuses to accept it. Soon after, in a moment of jealousy and anger, he asks one of his connections to frame Captain Kyung for smuggling drugs. The plan works. Kyung is arrested, and his mother confronts him. Heartbroken, he insists he's been framed. His mother, realizing the truth, figures out that Jin Pyong is behind it all. She urges Gaeun to make things right, and the faithful wife later asks Jin Pyong to help clear her husband's name, to which the commander reluctantly agrees. The following night, Jin Pyong walks into a surprise celebration prepared by his wife and friends. He's just been promoted to general. During dinner, his wife proudly announces that she's pregnant. Instead of joy, the news fills Jin Pyong with sadness and regret. He spends the rest of the night drowning himself in alcohol. When he notices Gaeun stepping outside, he follows her and asks why she won't be with him. But once again, she turns him down and walks back into the house. Drunk and desperate, Jin Pyong storms in after her and, in front of everyone, shouts for her to take him back. In his breakdown, he exposes their secret affair for all to hear. Captain Kyung rushes to stop him, but Jin Pyong punches him and knocks him out. Other men quickly restrain Jin Pyong while Galen, mortified, runs away. Later, his father-in-law confronts him about the scandal and orders him to be sent overseas to reflect on his actions. Before his departure, Jin Pyong meets Gaeun one last time. He apologizes and tells her he's being sent to Vietnam, and begs her to come with him. But she refuses once more, saying it's over between them. Broken and unable to bear the pain, Jin Pyong pulls out his gun and shoots himself in the chest. He survives, but the scene fades on his collapse. 2 years later, an officer visits Galen and hands her an old photograph of her and Jin Pyong. He tells her that Jin Pyong died in battle while trying to save his men in the mountains. Tears fall down her face as she turns the photo over. On the back are 2 simple words written in his hand, "My love."